All right. So my name is Kika, Junior Lusu Kika. That's the J. I usually abbreviate it because I don't like being called Junior. And I'm currently a PhD student in plant sciences at the University of Cambridge. So today I'll be trying to share with you how to succeed in scholarship application. And I wanted to title this Some Luck, Some Good Timing, but also the audacity to try. I'm from Congo, and yeah, of course, currently I'm in the UK, but I've been moving around studying. I think I've been doing this for a very long time. So I did my undergrad in Kenya, and then I did my master's in Belgium, and now I'm doing my PhD in the UK. So probably some of you will be disappointed because I'm not going to give you a guide, like a step-by-step process on how to apply for a scholarship. But I'll just try to share with you some of the experience I've had in scholarship application and how this somehow managed to make my application better. So let's go. So normally for a typical scholarship, of course, you'll have to check qualifications. So do you meet like the minimum requirements? Usually you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and sometimes if, for example, your bachelor's degree does not meet the minimum grade, you might be supplemented by either a master's or maybe work experience, depending on the scholarship, the place, the institution, even the research area. Scholarship will also include proposals and essays and standard procedures to follow. And all these will really be dependent on the scholarship and the university. So usually a scholarship at Cambridge depends on whether you are admitted to the program first, and then everything else will depend on the funding body itself. And this is scholarship dependent. And as I told you, I'm not going into this process per se, but I'll just go through these few lines. Also, you will need to check your referees and recommendations. I think one of the most important bits to consider is your referee really recommending you? Because sometimes it's so generic, so poor, or so bland. While whoever is reading the recommendation, especially in any good university, will try to see if really whoever is recommending you knows you and they have genuine interests, they had genuine interest in whichever relationship they had with you to be able to recommend you. For reaching out to supervisor, this is more relevant to PhD students, and probably in a place like Cambridge when you're doing MPhil by dissertation only, you might need to reach out to supervisors. So this is also either PhD or program dependent. But also need to understand university dynamics, the research group you might be joining, and all these kind of subtle elements around what will be your experience if you're going to any university. For example, if you're coming to Cambridge, you'll need to know about colleges. Literally, this will be the place you might be accommodated at. This will be your social environment around. This will be the people who will either fund some of your professional and career growth along the way. If you're doing a PhD or if you're doing a master's or whatever you're doing, a college in Cambridge is very important. But this is a thing of Cambridge and maybe the University of Oxford. Other universities usually don't have this kind of structure. So it's very important to understand where you're going and the dynamics around, and this will help you to get better prepared in case you are given a place. So, but today what I want to talk about is really not the step-by-step process of applying to a scholarship, but my own experience of applying to a few scholarships and how this has either changed or the bits of element that made this to be better along the way. So the experience itself, I think as any lucky person along the way have had a lot of regrets. So like you can see, these are snapshot of 3 emails. They're quite more than that, but this, I just wanted to show you an intro to that. So the first one is the Orange Knowledge Scholarship Program from the Netherlands, which I applied to, and I got a regret. The second one on the left is for chevening, which I also applied to and I still got a regret. The third one on the lower right is a doctoral program in Germany and other European countries, if I remember well. And yeah, it didn't work. And actually, the most funny experience is there's another one I applied to. I did not even apply, but I got a regret. So for this one, I saw the opportunity and I was like, well, I could reach out to the supervisor and ask some relevant question. And then I sent the email to ask questions. And then after a few weeks, I got a response. We are sorry, we have to pursue other candidates. Well, so this is the experience. So I was doing this, and of course, I know the material I submitted. I know the material I submitted in the next one and in the next one. And then I was trying along the way to change whatever I felt like was not right and see how I could maximize my chances. But failure and getting regret and not succeeding at the first trial is part of the process, and it's something that I think everyone should accept. It's not to say you're not qualified or you're not good enough, but it's part of the process. So now, just having that in mind, you have experienced failure, and after a few years, after trying this, because I think I started applying for scholarship mostly around 2018 or 2019, and a few months ago, I had a friend of mine, when I was already in Cambridge and I was already doing my PhD, I had a friend of mine who approached me and he invited me to a webinar just like this, and he sent me this. It was like, we want you to talk about writing a winning motivation essay. And when I was home and sat down, and I was like, okay, I need to write a winning motivation essay. What is a winning motivation essay? I had to go back in my mindset when I was applying to whichever scholarship I now applied to later on, which eventually succeed, because that would be the winning motivation essay. And when I was really thinking about it, I didn't see in myself that mindset of someone who was writing a winning motivation essay. I was just writing an essay that I thought was going to get me the scholarship. But my mindset in the moment, and after learning through the experience of applying, and the mindset I had when I was applying for that specific scholarship was really not about winning, not about getting it no matter what, but it was more about genuineness and honesty. The scholarships that I've got, as I applied to Belgium and I applied to, I'll give more details later, but I'm now in Cambridge. I did my master's on a full, I'm now a doctoral student in Cambridge, but I also did my master's on a fully funded scholarship in Belgium. This scholarship, I don't think I was trying to write a winning motivation essay, but I was trying to write genuine motivation essay. And it's really important when you're writing whatever you're writing to be genuine, because if you have reached a point where you are trying to apply for any scholarship, that like you have already conceived that possibility in your mind that I should apply for this scholarship, that means genuinely you might be either qualified or overqualified for it or just good enough for it. And that's something that many people don't realize, to the point where you'll be applying and you'll try to look for something, something beyond the imaginable. But actually, the moment I started applying with just saying things as they come in my mind, as I think I want them to be, personally, I think that's when I started winning. So, yeah. So from writing a winning motivation essay, I changed the topic and the talk, and I was like, I'll just talk to you guys about how to write or how I wrote a genuine motivation essay. Now, what is the not so genuine or honest application? I believe most of people in the audience today are from Africa, and we can all relate with this kind of map about Africa. We have many problems facing our continent. So you will talk about politics, you'll talk about hunger, you'll talk about diseases and food security, you'll talk about child soldier, you'll talk about thirst, impunity, corruption, climate change, we literally face any kind of problem. And usually when someone is applying to a program, wherever, and they tell you to justify why you're applying for that program, I think intuitively, the thing that crosses your mind first is to say, I'm applying for this because I want to solve this problem. You're like, yeah, there's a lot of malnutrition in my community, and I'm applying for a PhD in agriculture because I want to study how to produce more food, how to deal with crop diseases, how to do all this stuff. Very applicable, very good reason, very altruistic reason, maybe. But imagine when you're applying for a PhD, and just imagine applying for a PhD at a university like Cambridge. You have professors, I think Abel can attest to that. You have your professors and all these people around here who have fostered their career into innovation, making the big discovery. It's not just about solving an issue. Issues are being solved, of course, because science is advancing. But whatever drives people here is not really, I'm trying to necessarily solve the issue, but I'm trying to study this and understanding it so well that eventually it will solve the issue. If you ask a typical African student, and this is actually very common even now, and even in our African community, people who are here in Cambridge know that very well. If you ask a typical African, why are you studying what you're studying? They'll start by telling you the story about home and how people are suffering and how people are doing ABC and how it's not working. And then if you go and ask one of the UK students here, why are you studying what you're studying? And then they'll just be like, I find it interesting. I find it fascinating. I like it. And it's like, whoa, okay, you're not trying to solve hunger issue. You're not trying to solve corruption. You're not trying to solve some very deep problem that is facing your community, or that your community is facing. And you'll realize that it's the science, it's the interest in the mechanisms, in the intricacies, it's not just, I want to go and solve climate change. I want to avoid, global warming. No, it's like, what about global warming? Are you interested in the skies? Are you interested in how the sun is being, how the heat is reflected by the soil surface? Are you interested in how houses or the material that's making these houses is reacting to the sun coming or to gather greenhouse gases accumulating in our atmosphere? Those kind of questions. Are you interested in those? Because that's what you'll be doing if you're applying for a PhD to Cambridge. When you'll be going to the lab every day in the morning, when you'll be going to the library, when you'll be reading the books and the papers. The ultimate goal, of course, is so that your research could be applied home, where you're coming from. But what you're doing on a daily basis is to be in the lab with some transparent tubes and transferring liquid from one to the other and doing this kind of thing, trying to understand which gene is interacting with what other gene, which solar panel is better than the other, which molecule is doing this and that and that. And this is the kind of things that will make your application stand out. If you tell someone, I want to join your lab because joining your lab will allow me to solve food security, they'll be like, I don't know if I've been working in this lab for 20 years, I've not solved food security. But if you told the guy, I saw that molecule you're studying, it's really interesting, and I don't know how it's interacting with the other one, and I don't know how it's going ABC, and it's like, oh, this guy has interest in what I'm doing. So you might have an application that is coming from your own mindset, from your own background, which usually is problem-based. But you need to focus if you're applying to probably most scholarship, because a PhD is also a PhD and also a research-based program is really about you waking up every day and being able to survive the harsh environment, the intense program, the stress that might come with everything, because you believe and you like doing and understanding this mechanism at the basic level, at their deepest understanding, or whatever. I hope you get my point. So also the other thing that might not always be correct is this trying to write the winning, the perfect, the best motivation. It's not really about doing the best motivation. It's about doing the most honest. If someone is reading your project, they don't want to see someone who knows everything, someone who has done everything. If someone is evaluating your application, it's not about you being, I don't know, the flawless person, because whatever thing you're applying for will be a learning experience. And we want to see someone who is coming from somewhere and can they be taken to the next phase. So winning, best, perfect, it's okay if you can do it, just go ahead and do it, but focus on being genuine and being honest. And this is because winning, perfect, and there's a lot of tutorials, a lot of webinars organizing this. Sometimes it ends up being too cliche, too good to be true, or literally lies. Also, avoid being generic if you're applying, because you're applying to someone who has probably spent part of their life evaluating applications. They can know, they can see, they can get this kind of things which are very generic. And nowadays, it's ChatGPT that everyone is using. So just be you. You can use whatever tool available to you to make things better, maybe to kind of enhance the quality of your application, but the background, the basis should be genuine and it should be about you. And I can assure you that people have a way of guessing these kind of things or identifying when things are not really genuine or honest. And as someone who has got in the past a fully funded scholarship in a master program and now a fully funded scholarship in a PhD program, master scholarships usually target people with experience, or people who are working, or people who are really, now that's the Africa people, we want to solve issues. If you're applying to the MasterCard's program in Cambridge, for example, they want you to want to go back home to solve a certain problem after your master's. So they are usually going to target you if you're already working on something and they know this master will give you some kind of skills that you can go back and build up on to solve whatever issue or whatever thing you believe deserve this kind of knowledge and investment. But that's not the case, that's not necessarily the case for PhDs, because you can imagine when you're coming for a PhD, you'll be in a certain place for years. And those years, you're not going to spend them with doing consistently something that is being applied like along the way. You might just be here for the full 3 years, and then after that, if you're lucky enough, you get some publications and you get some implementation or some facilitation to implement what you've been learning. But a PhD is really, as I've been saying it previously, is really about you investing in the process of doing it, because it can be intense, it can be stressful, it can be tough, but it can also be fulfilling, satisfying, and it can be enjoyable if you know how to socially ground yourself, how to care about your mental well-being and all the intricacies of navigating an intense life of a researcher. So yeah, I just wanted to mention this because most applications are really focused on this fighting mindset of getting the best and the winning and the perfect, but this is not necessarily what people are looking for. It's the you into your application that is the most interesting bit. So the idea is really for a person to try to find what drives them, capitalize on that, and do your application based on this kind of background. Now, what drives you is not necessarily passion. For example, me, I think I'm passionate about the kind of research I'm doing. I like it, and this really keeps me going. But some people are just ambitious, and their ambition allow them to have this fighting spirit and taking everything that comes their way. They just want it all. I won't judge. Some people are just, they just want to stay in their comfort zone. And by comfort zone, I don't mean you being in a place where you refuse to grow. No, it's like some people are just good at studying. You'll try to do math your whole life and you'll never get it. But someone just does it and it works. And it's comfortable for them to do that. And they might just choose to do something that they like doing within, in which they have the potential to grow. That also can be a drive. Some people, probably that's my second personality, they just follow the wind and I'll take whatever comes. And so whichever is your driving force, use that to propel you into being genuine when you're trying to apply. I mean, I'm not telling you to go and mention in your application that this is a comfortable zone for me. I'm just saying, just know yourself, know your personality, know the kind of drive you have. And when you are typing or writing or whatever motivation or statement or whatever thing you need to do in your application, have that in mind and let that come out on your paper. Because I can assure you this, if someone reads something and then it's so original, it's so personal, consideration will definitely be given to such kind of application than something that is generic, that anyone can do, anyone can Google, anyone can get from ChatGPT. So now, from the experience of failure and from knowing all these things, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what might have changed between the application that I did that didn't pass and the ones that actually did pass. So as I told you, I had just to get back to myself and ask, what should I do different? Actually, I didn't even ask myself that. I just started applying, but not trying to be extra impressive, but just saying things as they come out in my mind because I found my interest. I know what I wanted to do. And I was just writing that. So, and I actually believe this is a nice way, especially if you're trying to get something that is research-based. What you want, you know yourself, you know what you want. And whoever is offering the PhD, they know what they might be looking for, but you can just convince them that actually you're looking for me. And that's how I started approaching my application. So I'll just, in this text, this is literally part of my motivation when I was applying to Cambridge, and probably the same, it was around the same lines when I was applying to another PhD in France and in the Netherlands, both of which I got when I was applying. But that's a good thing. Now you get the luxury of choice. I came to Cambridge, of course. So you see, like, I just introduced myself and I'm like, this is what I'm interested in. And this is how I want to do it. So I'm interested in understanding how plants defend themselves against pathogen as well as the pathogen strategies. And I was like, more precisely, this is what I want to do. And I was like, to do this as I want to do it, I want to apply this kind of techniques. And then I said, and this is what your opportunity is giving me. So literally these sentences, they didn't come from a random place. I'd already discovered an interest I had. And when I was trying to get a topic I'm interested in, when I was trying to come up or to identify potential PhD opportunities that would fit my interest, I was not coming from a just start writing a statement place. I know what I wanted. I'd already phrased it in my mind. I was looking for something that was giving me that, and I was just telling it blank in my application. And this is literally that audacity to try. And I think, as you can see in the first one that I highlighted, I know this kind of research will end up being applied in agriculture, and so you'll end up maybe help in solving food security and whatever. But I didn't mention that I'm trying to solve food security. I just mentioned I want to understand how plants defend themselves. I want to understand how the pathogen does whatever it does to the plant to infect successfully the plant. And I was like, I want to understand the mechanism, the frameworks and the adaptation and whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, yeah, And now we can use this eventually to manage the pathogen. So you can understand that if someone is offering a PhD for 3 years, the only someone will be able to be doing and sitting on this for the 3 years. Because eventually, probably by the time I'll be leaving my lab after my PhD, my research will not even be applicable in the field yet. And I'm not talking about, I cannot generalize projects because some people have more broadly applied kind of topics and others more already in the humanities and social sciences. So you are literally on the fields. But the idea is, are you interested enough in doing this, or you just have this general appreciation of the field without really trying to get into the intricacies of it? And of course, you can add a bit of salt in your application just to make things, be interesting. So what really changed for me was the mindset I was using back when I was applying, and when I checked back everything that failed, it was really because I was focusing on having this applied research. I just want to solve malnutrition. I want to develop agriculture systems which are going to be ABC. So I was not really focused on that applied system anymore, but I was more into the mechanisms. Again, this is more for the PhD applicants and not for masters, which are targeting people who are going to go back and implement whatever they are learning. So I think we should be able to make these kind of distinctions depending on what you're applying for. And yeah, the winning motivation and all those writing the best and the most perfect and all this was not the same in my mind anymore. I just wanted to say what I wanted to do. And I was very, how can I say it, very picky about the projects I was targeting and I was applying to, because I knew what I wanted and it was easier for me to filter out whatever I was not interested in and to go ahead. And it makes things easier for you, because if you're applying to everything and everywhere, you might end up just being very diluted in terms of your content. But if you know what you really want, it's also easier to have a very strong application, I believe. So that was my way of approaching it. So I applied to 4 places for my PhD application, and I managed to get 3 of those places. And I'm not going to lie to you, all of them were literally around the same kind of topic. So this backbone and this background statement I wrote was literally just modified a bit to the organism I was studying or to the project, the specific group and the place I was going to. But the content, the essentials were literally the same. And again, genuine interest, genuine intention can be felt in your work and in whatever you submit. For example, when I was submitting for my current position, I didn't just, again, it was not just some random phrasing I was putting in my application. But after talking about the topic, when I was justifying my reason for choosing the topic I had chosen, I had to mention the supervisor that I was going to work with. And I had to mention him because I've gone through his work. I had gone through some of his papers, some of his biggest research out there, and I tried to really see if they fit to what I'm trying to get. And I really think one thing that researchers like is to feel like their work is reaching someone, is feeling appreciated. You're not just coming to my lab because this is some ambition and some next step in your professional journey, but I want to know that whatever I'm doing is also interesting. So in this bit that I just highlighted, like I really mentioned it in my application to Cambridge. The other reason for my interest is the possibility to be supervised by my current supervisor, whose work I have incredible admiration for. But if I'd stopped just right there, it would be like, yeah, everyone can say that. But I was like, I like his creative curiosity to tackle issues in plant parasitic nematodes because I believe they push the boundaries of what other people are doing. And I even went further and I gave examples of some of the papers and some of the that's what I consider major discovery from his own research, because I had read it, because I was genuinely interested in it, and I was not just applying from a random place. So again, these kind of things can be felt when you are being genuine or not. And probably that would be my biggest advice if you're applying. Just minimize the places you're applying to, or at least minimize the fields or the overreaching theme of your application, and focus on the few to make something that can be more substantial and substantive. So that's just my way of approaching. So after changing my mindset and doing things differently, as a result, I got my master's scholarship in Belgium, where I did my MSc at Ghent University. And then I got PhD studentship in France, in the Netherlands, and in Cambridge. And yeah, luxury of choice, of course, I chose Cambridge, where I am right now. That's it. Thank you for listening. And I don't know if you have any question.
Kika, I didn't know that you are able to share this story very well like this. But thank you so much for sharing your heart out with the students from different parts of the world. Kika, your message is very clear and it's very well aligned. But Kika, just to share with you, because I've been in this space for coaching, but also mentoring for the last 4 years now. Kika, the biggest issue is that students come when they have not clearly articulated the technique they want to learn and expertise they want to grow during the master's and the PhD. What's your advice, Kika? Literally, they haven't figured that out, but they just feel they want to have a master's.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, when I was applying and I was not making it, I had the same mindset because I had finished my undergrad. I wanted to get a master's and eventually a PhD. It was really just there. But I don't think that's a good approach to have. Just to be honest, I don't think you can want to have a master's, but at least have an interest, like something you're interested in. The good thing about education, maybe master's, PhD and everything, is that this is a learning experience. This is a learning opportunity. You are not expected to come knowing what you'll be studying. Otherwise, there would be no need for it to be offered in the first place. But the thing you need to have at least is interest. And when you're too broad in your interest, then that's also, even for scholarship, for example, and this is probably something behind closed door for people who maybe may consider to apply for PhD, for MPhil, MasterCard scholarship to Cambridge, for example. They'll tell you if a student is applying for 2 different programs, and then these 2 different programs are completely unrelated, and you cannot see in the application anything that's kind of sets a link between these 2. Because you can say, okay, you're applying for, say, agriculture, something related to agriculture, and then you apply for something related to maybe environmental sustainability. You can link these to someone who will be like, yeah, my agriculture, I want to do this because I want to be involved in sustainable food systems. And then if you're applying to environmental sustainability, it's because, by studying environment, you can know how to understand this and then apply it into agriculture and food systems. So you can apply to these 2 programs and you can genuinely, because you realize it's the same people who are going to evaluate these 2 scholarship files. So you can at least, they will see that this person knows what they want, and from both sides they can get this. But if you're applying to agriculture and then you're applying to material engineering, and then here you're talking about foods and soil, and then here you're talking about some metals, and it's all over the place. So I do understand someone wanting to do just a master's, but I think the very basic thing that you may need to have is an interest, like something that interests you. Not necessarily, you don't need to know the technique. You don't need to know the mechanisms behind, especially for a master's. But you just need to have that interest. And if you have an interest in something, eventually you will start trying to learn about it. And that's really my advice. Because I got my scholarship to Belgium, for example. It's actually a very funny story because I would not have got it if COVID-19 never happened. So I was home, and then I knew I was already interested in plant pathology, but I didn't know anything about nematodes. I didn't find any interest in nematodes. But when you're in lockdown and then you cannot leave the house, and then all of a sudden they tell you there is this crash course organized somewhere, you can apply for it, and if you get it, you'll get a travel grant to the place for 1 week. You have accommodation, and then you get this training. And then it was in Nairobi. It was a training on nematology. Then I was like, "Whoa, nematodes, they're interesting. They're actually plant pathogens. Okay, this can also be part of my interest." And then these guys were like, "Yeah, by the way, we have this master program in Belgium if you want to apply." I was like, I could link these nematodes already to my interest. And then when I was applying, I was just like, guys, I followed this course. I learned about nematodes. Now I think nematodes fit in plant pathology, and I want to study this. And then, of course, you have to write and make your story. But I think, you just need to have the interest in the first place, and that can take you a long way.
Kika, thank you so much. I want to pick up again from two aspects. The first one is I have a mentee, and this is the 4th week. And she says she doesn't know what to do for her career. So we began by going through the personal discovery process. The first week, she said she wants to become a data scientist. And he developed a 4-page document on becoming a data scientist 16 years from now. Within 2 days, she came up with another document saying she wants to become a psychotherapist consultant somewhere. Within another time, she said, no. She now wants to become something. And this is not actually a younger person. This is not a younger person. This is somebody clocking 40 years of age. And this is actually almost entering the 4th week. And she says, I haven't decided where I want to focus my career. What's your advice, Kika, to such a client, to such a fellow?
That's a tough one. It's actually very interesting. But what I would say is, so let me just tell you something. At some point early in my life, I wanted to become a doctor. Right? It didn't work. I ended up studying agriculture. But why did I end up studying agriculture? It was actually a very funny reason. I had two choices. Either I start my undergrad in May, in which case I would study agriculture, or I wait until September for the main intake, in which case I would be studying medicine. And I was like, I don't want to wait until September. That's too much. I will be home doing what until September? That will be boring. I want to start, And so I think you just reach a point where you have to make a choice, and then you live with it. Because if I sit right now here and I'm like, what if I had studied medicine? Probably the trajectory would have been different. Everything would have made sense differently. I do think if you have so many, I don't know if I would call those options, but so many things you are doubting about and you don't know which one to pick, then just do a random choice and live with it. I had, people don't speak French, but there's a very nice French expression which says, I will translate it. It says, après avoir choisi, on se contente du hasard de l'existence et alors on peut l'aimer. It means, after choosing, just get content with whatever life brings to you, and eventually you might love it. So that would be my advice, especially if there is like this fluctuation in interest. Just get into one and you will like it eventually. Don't look back.
Yeah, thank you so
That's
much.
it.
Yeah, Chika, thank you so much. Right now you are engaged in mentoring students who are already at University of Cambridge.
Yeah.
What are their main regrets? Are there some who get to courses and they regret their choices when they are at Cambridge or at their university? Or you're finding that they're actually enjoying what they chose to come for, and what do you think is making them enjoy? I just want to pick your experience so far.
Let me see. Okay, from the batch of the current students, because they're still starting, so probably I cannot make conclusions on the experience so far because all of them are still like getting into the whole Cambridge space. But in a more general way, I think you have two sets of people which I would say behave differently when they start the experience in Cambridge. The first one is those who came well prepared, usually after some career somewhere. So they made a very informed decision. Like they were seated and they're like, let me just go and get this degree, then probably get back to my work, or maybe I'll be promoted, or like they just maybe faced a block professionally. So they made a very informed choice and then went back to school. And these ones, they're more relaxed, I would say, more or less, or more. I mean, they will still struggle because Cambridge will make you suffer a bit because you have to really deserve your success or whatever you get in the end. But you can see there is a bit of stability in the way they approach issues. And then you have the others who probably are coming from either right from undergrads or from just some early career, entry level kind of jobs. And they're still trying to explore the possibilities out there, what's going to happen next, what's going to be the next step. And now from this bunch, I think the biggest problem for them is not necessarily, especially for those doing MPhil and masters, the biggest problem is not necessarily the program, the master program itself. I've not encountered someone who regretted coming or regretted the process or regretted whatever they are doing, but it's really the next step after this, which is usually in their mind. It's like, and especially in the UK, you have a 1 year master program. So you are coming, this is a new country, you're settling in, and then by the time you're finishing the master program, you have to go back home. It's like, it really goes that fast and it's very intense. And the biggest issue and the biggest worry that most people have is that what's happening next? What's happening next? And you start thinking about this when you're just starting the master. And I think that could be probably one of the biggest issues I've encountered or heard of or like experienced from people I've interacted with in master programs.
Yeah, thank you.
But I don't think it's necessarily a problem. It's something worth thinking about.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's have Dennis. Dennis, you ask your question.
Hello.
Dennis, you're clear. Proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kika, for this insightful talk. So from my end, I'm Dennis. I'm from Kenya. I'm a master student here in China. This is my last year, so I'm also preparing to go Kika's way to do my PhD, probably maybe next year. So I've got two questions for you, Kika. This question is, what are some of the key maybe aspects we need to include when we want to write the call email to professors? Then the second question, now this is post application, you have been now accepted. When you go to maybe now that lab, what are some of the, even before applying, do we need to do some quick checkup for the kind of supervisor that we need to work with? Because, for PhDs are quite long. 4 years is not a joke. So these are like your parents, So I've encountered some students are complaining that maybe the supervisor are not treating them well. Some drop out along the way. So do we have any a way that we can maybe do a quick checkup to see that these supervisors are good for us? Because PhD is not a joke. It can take a toll on you. So do we have any maybe criteria that we can also use to gauge these supervisors? Because some are crazy, I've got a friend of mine here in China. The guy has been here maybe for like 6 years, and he's crazy. The supervisor is he doesn't want to listen to him. He consider him like he's lazy, not working. So you just feel like this guy is struggling. And the scholarship is almost coming to an end. He has extended maybe for an year. And when the visa expires, there's no other way. You just go back home. You might even go without your degree, which is very painful for you, because spending more than 5 years and you end up with nothing, there's another challenge for our students. So maybe you can share some of the insights that you have.
Yeah, I'll start with the second question. I think it's very important. And yeah, this will really depends on where you're applying to. But first of all, yes, you need to inquire or to know about your supervisor before starting. It's really important. If you can reach out to students who have been in the lab before you, probably don't go to the students who are currently in the lab because they might not tell you the truth. But if you can get maybe a postdoc or someone who has started their own career along the way, or someone who is not under that supervisor anymore, and you can ask them, you should definitely do that. Because yeah, a PhD is I think Abel can agree with me. It's quite an experience. It's not an easy one necessarily. Even when it's working and you feel like everything is going smoothly and your project it's not an easy one. And it can be lonely sometimes. So if you have a supervisor who is not genuinely interested in your success, like a supervisor who, besides you being maybe just a paper mill for him, doing the research for him, someone who is genuinely interested in your success, then probably you don't want to go for that PhD. So like, for example, in my lab right now, we have a new PhD students coming. These students literally came 3 weeks before it starts. He came to our lab to meet everyone in the lab. He literally sent an email. It was like, guys, I would like to meet you because I've been offered this PhD in your lab and I want to know more about the culture, how it works, because I don't want to engage on a PhD journey without being sure it's going to work for me, especially if the supervisor is not a good fit. So he came, we met, we talked. He talked to every member of the lab, and when he was satisfied, he sent his positive response to the supervisor, telling them he will be joining the lab. And even before that, he has reached out to some of the lab assistants and former PhD student that had left the lab before. So some places, when you do something like this, it will be seen in a very bad way, and it can even probably have a negative impression on your application or you being accepted in the place you're going to. But again, this could also be telling you that you don't want to do that PhD, or you don't want to work with that supervisor. I think, yeah, it's very important to reach out to people who have been in the lab or people who have worked with that person. If you cannot get the people who have been in the lab directly, people who have worked with the person, people who can give you a first-hand experience of how it is to work with a potential supervisor. That is very important. It's very relevant, and it can really, because a PhD, when you invest 4, 5, whatever number of years of your life into it, and then in the end, it's end up being more like a waste of your time, and it can have a mental strain on you. It can have, it's an intense program. So yeah, you really need to reach out to people who have worked with potential supervisor. That one is a must, I would say, to anyone who is planning to apply for a PhD. Now, for the first question which was about key aspect that you could mention includes in a cold email to a potential supervisor. Just as I said in the presentation, the idea is to have a genuine interest in this person. You can imagine a potential supervisor, especially if he has a big lab, is someone who received a bunch of emails a day, and they might not have a lot of time to go through them, and they don't want to read something that is quite generic, or just, you can see an email like, this person has sent this email to 50 other people. I'm just one of the other people on the chain. So yeah, you need to go. Maybe everyone nowadays has an online profile somewhere. It can be on the university website, on the laboratory website, on LinkedIn, Google Scholar, and this kind of things. You need to know what they're doing, how they're doing it. Try to understand if you can even read the paper. You don't even actually need to read the whole paper. Just read the abstract. If you understand the abstract, then you can phrase their research in your own way or your own understanding of it, and then reach out to them in that regard. You need to mention those kind of things. So if someone reads and then they know your interest is genuine because you've actually done some homework, then I think that should be enough. Those are the kind of things that should be mentioned. And if the interest is caught, then you can have or you can request a Zoom meeting or a Zoom call or something to chat with them and see if it still flows. What you should not do is, I think the worst you can do is, if, for example, you like to reach out and then you go and read a paper and then you don't understand the paper, but you want to mention whatever you read in your cold email, and then you end up saying something that is false, that's not very good. So just try to understand things that they're doing in some kind, in a way, and then, I think it's important for them to see that you're actually interested, and it's real, it's genuine, it's honest. Yeah. And Dennis is actually my undergraduate classmates, just to mention that. So it's nice to catch up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kika. We have only 2 minutes to go, but if somebody else has a question, please raise up your hand and I'll give you a chance. Kika, another point is you come from Congo. What are those barriers that you overcame for you to get your master's scholarships and then the PhD scholarship? What are those barriers that you overcame?
I think the biggest barrier for me along the way was language. So I come from Congo, which is a French-speaking country. And once you start looking at the research environment, the innovation, everything that is like very recent, very innovative, very good, very new, very impressive, it's done in English. So coming from a French background is already itself a barrier that you have to overcome. Probably that was one of the reasons I ended up in Kenya for my undergrad studies, because I wanted to have that opening to this kind of space. Number two, when you come from a country like mine, it's those countries where you don't know what may happen tomorrow, especially if you're on the eastern part of the country. Everything fluctuates. It's really you survive because of grace. So you study, but you don't know if the academic year is going to finish. You start, but you might have to move from school to school. I had my own experience of moving from school to school, my primary education and my early high school education, because of instability in the region. And yeah, these kind of things will happen. And yeah, the idea is to, at least for me, it was tough. The movements, the motion, the family not being in one place, but then you get to the new place and you try to adapt. And if it works, then you're lucky. Yeah, it worked for me, at least. I managed to adapt to it, and that's probably why I'm here. But yeah, probably those are the two biggest issues I faced, especially considering higher education and my interest in research.
Great. And we have one last question from Martin. And Martin's question is very important, because I just had it, 4 of my candidates just refusing to submit. Martin, do you want to ask your question loudly? They just refuse to submit their Chevening application. Martin?
Okay, I can see it in the chat. Huh?
Okay.
How do you fight procrastination while applying for scholarships? This is a good one. This is a good. Okay. I'm going to be very honest with you. Myself, I'm a very serial procrastinator and I'm a highly deadline motivated individual. So my fight of procrastination is a deadline. So if I want to do something very well, I had to set myself a deadline. So at least when it comes to scholarship application, if I know deadline will be on the 10th of whichever month is coming, I'll just say, okay, I need to have done this by this. And then I involve someone else in the process. I'll tell a friend, I'll tell like I'm supposed to do this and remind me of it, especially if I have someone who I know can also review my application or something like that. So I'll talk to them about it and then I'll tell them to give me a deadline by when I should give them a draft of whatever I'm trying to submit. And at least I know I'm accountable to them. And once I know there's that deadline and I need someone to evaluate it because I don't want to submit it without anyone having like a read through, that could motivate me to work on it. So yeah, if you are able to be self-disciplined and respect your deadline, it's okay. But if you are like me, you need to to really be pushed around, then involve someone else. Like here, for example, I'm doing my PhD. Usually I'm doing something and then I'm like, yeah, I can keep on pulling and pulling on this. But if I go to my supervisor and I'm like, so I'm working on this right now and I'll try to update on it by Friday. And then I know my supervisor, I'm accountable to her. So by Friday, I'll try to make sure whatever I'm supposed to do has been done. So that's my way of fighting procrastination, because if it just depends on me, I probably will wait for next year. But if someone is involved and deadline is involved, I'm probably going to do better about it.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Kika. And my inquiry to you that all these people you see on the call making the applications now to various master's and PhD scholarships. What's your last advice to them? And maybe how can they access you in the future if they want to inquire on something?
If they want to access me, they can get me on LinkedIn. So my name is J Lusu Kika. So that's the easier way, I guess. But the last advice for me, especially for people who are applying right now, is to be genuine in your application, because genuineness also means originality. And this is the first, because, okay, you need your application to stand out. And the first standing out of an application is it being original. Because if you apply, if you fill your application as you, no one else is going to do it like that. And that would be my first advice. My second one, if you have reached a point where you are considering applying for something, this is a scholarship or a degree or whatever, that means you are probably qualified for it. Maybe you're overqualified for it. And at worst, you are good enough for it. So have that audacity to try. Just do it. The worst you can get is a no. And the no means try next time. But yeah, just go for it and good luck. For those who are applying to Cambridge, welcome probably next year. I'm part of the African Society, so you will see me if you come.
Good, and we shall stop there, Kika, and thank you so much for creating time to speak to us. We will get in touch.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
So keep in touch with you on LinkedIn, and thank you so much for coming, everyone.